Hello and welcome to a live deprogram with Keri Smith. I'm your host, Keri. Today is Monday, September 30th, and thank you all for being here. We are going to be looking through some of the news coverage today of the Hurricane Helene's devastation in our southern states and some of the relief efforts. And I assume this is going to be a pretty heavy show because of some of the things I have pulled up. And I'll just say, if you're a believer, just pray for people who are in these states. There's a lot of, I don't know if you guys feel the same way I do, but it seems like there's a lot of avoidance of the issue. I'm from South Carolina. All my family's still there and in Tennessee, and um, I have a lot of friends in South Carolina, and what I'm hearing from people there is that it just seems off, like something's odd. One of my friends said it feels like we're not even part of the country, like it's not a national discussion. It feels like we're foreigners, except if we were foreigners, they would be giving us a lot more assistance and talking a lot more about us and what's happening here. And my family is doing okay. My all of my family members are without power in different parts of the state, and but it didn't flood. It's just a lot of down power lines for them. And in some places like where my parents are, they're being told the power won't be back before Friday at the earliest, um, which is crazy. Just to that long without power. I don't know why it would take that many, a week, over a week. Um, it just seems a little different. Do you guys remember Hurricane Katrina? How it was like Hurricane Katrina, it felt like the whole world was watching together. I lived in LA back then. I wasn't in Texas. Um, I was in Los Angeles, and we were riveted, and everybody cared, and there were celebrity fund drives, and there were, it was remember the Mike Myers and Kanye West famous celebrity fund drive? Kanye said George Bush doesn't care about black people. Well, I guess if you were to extrapolate that, I guess you might be able to say Biden and Kamala don't care about white people. I've seen a lot of stuff online where there's leftists celebrating the deaths and celebrating the devastation and saying things like, these people deserved it. It's karma because they're white people who vote for Trump. And not only is it completely heartless and inhumane, but it shows a real ignorance as well, because some of these cities that are hardest hit, like Asheville, North Carolina, is a very blue city. They don't even vote the way you say they do, but I guess they deserve it according to you demons. So there's a lot of that. And that is, by the way, that's not novel. We've seen that before. We've seen these death dancers, these beasts, these monsters. They love having what they think is an excuse to show their inner monster to the world, to strut out in the sunlight and just be as monstrous as possible. We saw it after both two assassination attempts on Trump. We saw it from the left. They were celebrating it. They were mocking it. They were saying, next time don't miss. We saw it after the BLM sniper killed 5 police officers in Dallas, Texas, which is one of the things that started my waking up journey, was seeing people on the left celebrating that and saying, well, some old white men need to die. We saw it at the mass shooting at the congressional baseball game, when a crazy leftist shot 4 people, one of them being Congressman Steve Scalise, and people were celebrating it because it was Republicans who were shot. We saw it during COVID, these death dancers. I mean, that's the most immediate, biggest example, when they were celebrating, wishing death upon those of us who did not get the vaccine. Just heartlessness. And they like flaunting it like a sociopath, like a murderer who returns to the scene of the crime, who wants to be near it, who kind of wants to, gets off on being there fully seen and knowing what he did. That's what it makes me think of, these people who they like being seen. They have the veneer of, plausible deniability about their intent, because they say things like, well, it's just karma. If you believed in climate change, then what would that do if you believed in climate change? Anyway, I've seen a lot of that, which is disgusting. And what I have to say about that is, they are not like us, these monsters. And God willing, we won't ever become like them. I am wearing my MAGA hat today. I got this on the road trip with my husband. I figured it was finally time to get the MAGA hat, because people call me MAGA all the time anyway. So who cares? MAGA, fully on board. I do want to make America great again. I have what I think is a pretty basic question that we should all be asking right now, which is why is it that we seem to have endless taxpayer dollars for middle-class Americans, endless taxpayer dollars to throw at foreign wars, and we can't take care of our own? We have so many problems here at home, and that's not even counting disasters like the hurricane. And it really puts it in stark relief what our government prioritizes, what our government thinks is worthwhile. When did we stop taking care of our own first? Okay. Well, that's what we're talking about today. If you've got stuff you want me, just drop it in the comments. If there's things you want me to see, I mean, there's so much stuff I have pulled up, but if there's anything you think I need to cover that I'm not covering, just drop it. Hey, Randy, I saw Randy yesterday at church. Randy Wallen for $2, who says, nice hat. Woohoo. Yeah, I finally got the MAGA hat. Hey, if you're like me, if you're a Johnny come lately, if you're a liberal who's voting for Trump, who left the left, and you're afraid to wear the MAGA hat, or you're like, I'm not really a part of, I'm voting for Trump, but I'm not like MAGA. That's me. That's what I've always thought. Not anymore. I'm fully a part of MAGA now. They tried to kill this guy twice. They put him in some clown courts with trumped up charges, excuse the pun, so they can, in the media, say he's a felon. After those BS convictions, that's when I was like, I'm getting the hat. I'm gonna get the hat. And I'll tell you, it's not like wearing it if you're a liberal who's voting for Trump and you're scared, or it's the first time you're voting for, or whatever. Look, let me tell you something. You might be afraid of what people are going to say when you wear this. And we have been, my husband and I have been, when I go out in it sometimes, especially the first day. But overwhelmingly, I've gotten positive responses from people who are like, I like the hat, as they walk by you. And actually, let me just, before I get into the main topic, just let me say two different experiences. The first day I wore it, it was during the month long tour that we were on, and we were coming back to Texas. We were in Wyoming, and that was the first day I wore it all day, and two different people commented on it, and both were positive. So the first one was we were pumping gas, and I was coming back to the van after paying, and this older gentleman saw me, smiled, and then followed me to the van. He didn't see my husband on the other side of the van. He followed me to the the driver's side of the van, and he was like, I'd take you out any day of the week, any night of the week. I'd take you out any night of the week. And I was like, wow, well, thank you, sir. But I'm happily married and heading home to Texas. And he's like, well, I really like the hat. And I'm like, okay, thank you. So that was the first hat interaction. Got an offer for dinner any night of the week. That also means the expensive nights, right? Isn't that what that means? I'd take you out even on a Saturday night. So that was kind of funny. And then the second one was, oh, we went into a Sprouts. And this was once we had hit Colorado and we were in a very, what we thought was probably a very blue part of Colorado. And, Sprouts can be a little, maybe a little, that might be where you find some of the woke people, depending on where you're at. And so in the Sprouts, I was fully anticipating a bad encounter, but wore the hat. And we got to the checkout, and I may have told you this one already, but the checkout girl was ringing us up, and then she was, I think, partially deaf because she had a speech impediment, but she said something. She said, "I like the hat," and I was shocked. It was this young woman, and she said, there's no way I could vote for a Democrat. I'm going to be voting for Trump. But she said, my boyfriend keeps trying to convince me to vote for Democrats, and there's just no way I could do that. And I just said, well, you do you. And I told her, look, I'm a liberal with the hat. So, when she was laughing. But that was a positive encounter too. And I fully expected when she said something, I was like, oh no, here it comes. And it was the opposite of what I thought. So, okay. Brett, I love your hat. Thanks. Okay. Let's get into it. So, well, I do have one quick announcement, and we're getting into it. This is the announcement. We are reading for a book club Hillbilly Elegy by J.D. Vance. If you want to be a part of the Deprogrammed book club discussion for this book, it's going to be on Tuesday, October 15th at 6:00 Central. And it's a Zoom video discussion. It's private. And if you want to be a part of it, just email me at deprogrammedpod@gmail.com. And I will get you the link. I haven't sent the link out yet. So if you've already emailed me, it's coming. Don't worry. Just make sure you're in my inbox asking for the link, and I'll get it for you. It's very timely. We wanted to read this before the election. So, and it's about Appalachia. Michael Coyer. Hello, Michael, for $9.99. Michael says, we got hit bad in the upstate. Just got our power back, have some water, roof, and property damage, but it all pales in comparison to Chimney Rock. It does, doesn't it? And I don't think people realize how far inland Chimney Rock is. People who are not from the area. It's I should pull up a map. It's so far inland, it's like not really a place where you would expect to get this kind of flooding. And it's just devastated. I'm sick about it. And also the Biltmore estate, I've got some video pulled up of that. Just awful. He says, I love that town, Chimney Rock. Yeah, and State Park. Me too. Pray for them. Yes. Thank you, Michael. And Randy Wallen for $10. Thank you, Randy. He says the government didn't care about Maui. That's true. And they don't care about the South. The left doesn't care about anyone who disagrees or gets in their way. All are evil to their core. We're on our own by ample supplies. I have to agree. What did they give the people in Maui? $700 checks. That's what the relief effort ended up being. $700. I think it's the same. I don't see the same level of concern that I did for Katrina, and that was in the South, but that was different optics at the time because they could use it to attack a Republican president, Bush, who was in office. And I spared no good will for W. I hated him then. I hate him now. But I think the media, I think the whole apparatus and machine cared about it because, number one, they could try and make it about race, their favorite boogeyman and divisive issue. And they could try and say that, the U.S. doesn't care about Black people and George W. Bush doesn't care about Black people. And they could use it to attack the Republican president. And I think that's why they did pick up on it and focus on it and make it a national story. Such a national story that dominated the news, the entertainment shows, everything. I think that's why they did that then, and why they're not doing this now. Because who's in office right now? It's Biden. They're not going to try and lay this at his feet. And as we've seen from what a lot of the leftists are saying, they're gloating. They think it's all white people, which it's not also. But they're characterizing it as white people, which, they don't care about. So I think that's probably the difference. Yes, on Livion, they didn't care about Ohio after that massive train wreck either. No, they don't. It's weird how it's like it's not even part of the national consciousness. It's strange. To your point, Randy, in that super chat about being prepared and having supplies, people may try and make fun of preppers, but they've got the right idea. One of my friends in South Carolina, she was saying this, she's like, thank goodness we are preppers. We have all kinds of beans and rice stocked up and we're going to be fine. There have been a lot of leftist media articles in the past few years that say, well, you've seen the ones that say that working out and going to the gym is racist, which is ridiculous. It's crazy. They call it extreme right wing to go to the gym and care about your health. But they've also done a lot about prepping. They've also done a lot about people who grow their own food and how it's one sign that your friend might have turned into a right-wing radical is if they grow their own food and they stockpile supplies for an emergency. Oh my goodness, they're crazy right-wing extremists. Don't let them deter you with that nonsense. They don't want you to be prepared. You should be. My brother was saying, dealing without being without power for over a week isn't as bad as people not having supplies. And a lot of people they were not prepared, they don't have supplies, and getting out is impossible because of all the failed power lines. And so a lot of people are stuck at home without adequate preparation and supplies for something like this. So don't listen to them when they say, yeah, Davina, right-wing gardeners, you're all right-wing gardeners. Okay. Let's see. I wanted to read through. Let's start with this article because this, I think, is pretty fascinating how they're trying to, blame Trump for politicizing the hurricane. Even on Fox, and I've got a CNBC one pulled up as well. Maybe let's start with the CNBC one. Can you guys see that one? Okay. Headline: Trump to speak and hand out supplies in Georgia as Hurricane Helene fallout gets political. And then here are their key points. Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump will to deliver remarks and help hand out supplies in Valdosta, Georgia in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Trump recently, and then their second key point is Trump recently attacked Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democratic nominee, and President Joe Biden in politically charged terms over their response to the deadly storm. Now, what you'll notice is they attacked him first, but that's not worthy of being a key point. They said he was making light of the devastation. They did that. They said that first in the timeline of events. They attacked him first. But, why put that in a bullet point? Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump is set Monday to deliver remarks and help hand out supplies in the hurricane-blasted swing state of Georgia, one day after he leveraged the devastating storm as a political attack against Democratic nominee Kamala Harris. Wow. Nothing in here about how she did that to him first. Trump will travel to the southern city of Valdosta to receive a briefing on the impact of Hurricane Helene and, quote, facilitate the distribution of relief supplies before speaking to the press at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, his campaign said Sunday afternoon. The short notice trip comes as Harris, the vice president, scrapped planned campaign stops in Las Vegas in order to return to Washington, D.C. for a... Oh, my home security system's talking to me. Sorry. In order to return to Washington, D.C. for a briefing with the Federal Emergency Management Agency. President Joe Biden, meanwhile, said earlier Monday that he and Harris hope to travel to hurricane-damaged areas once they can be sure that their presence will not disrupt emergency response efforts. He later said that he expects to make a trip on either Wednesday or Thursday. Really? The hurricane's death toll has mounted to 116. since it made landfall as a Category 4 storm in northern Florida on Thursday night, according to NBC News count. At least 25 people in Georgia have been killed, said Governor Brian Kemp, a Republican, at a briefing Monday morning. Deaths have also been reported in Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. Ferocious rains, wind, and floods have left millions of people without electricity, and entire towns, including those hundreds of miles inland, like Asheville, North Carolina, have been submerged under feet of water. Now they got to bring it back to Trump and how he's a bad guy. On Sunday, Trump attacked Biden and Harris in politically charged terms over their response to Helene. Quote, they raise a lot of money from bad people, fundraising events with their radical left lunatic donors, when big parts of our country have been devastated by that massive hurricane and is underwater with many, many people dead, Trump said at the campaign rally in Erie, Pennsylvania. She ought to be here. She ought to be down in the area. That's where she should be. That's what she's getting paid for, right? That's what she's getting paid for, end quote. Now, look, now they include it. They bury it way down here. It's not one of their key bullet points. It's not how they frame the article. It's not how they lead the article, but they do include it way down here. They acknowledge that she attacked him first. Look at this. The Harris campaign and its allies had already lashed out at Trump for his remarks about Helene at a rally in Michigan on Friday when he told those affected by the hurricane, quote, we're with you all the way, and if we were there, we'd be helping you, and you'll be okay. She attacked him for saying that? We're with you all the way? A Harris campaign social media account quickly shared that clip to suggest that Trump was downplaying the disaster. The clip racked by Monday morning had racked. This whole article has not been proofread. Not only did they have problems in there at the beginning, look at this. The clip racked by Monday morning had racked up more than 5 million views on X, according to the site's tally. 5 million views. Trump's allies said the clip was taken out of context and defended his remarks, saying he was offering comfort to the storm's victims. Yes, of course he was. That's what he was doing. That's the truth. That's not just, a partisan spin. But some of the former president's opponents drew parallels between the quote and Trump's insensitive responses to previous natural disasters, including when he tossed paper towel rolls into a crowd of people who survived a hurricane in Puerto Rico in 2017. What? That's insensitive? They just treat it like it is. They don't say what some people call and thought was insensitive. They just say it was insensitive. They're telling you. I just had to get this piece in because it's just amazing. It's amazing. Look, if you're on the left and you're in the middle of waking up, I know I went through, it's a long process. Let's say you're at the beginning of it and you're starting to realize how much they lie to you, how much the media lies to us, how much they propagandize and they censor and they try and feed us what opinions they want us to have. If you're just starting to notice all this stuff, like this is a great example. I mean, just look at how they frame it. Trump's bad. Trump attacks them. He politicizes the hurricane. Oh, by the way down here, they attacked him too. And what they attacked him for was saying, we're with you all the way. Unbelievable. Just monsters. Monsters. Let's see. Where should I start? Okay. This is one of the more heartbreaking stories I've seen. A lot of people are, of course, if you're not on X, you don't get a lot of the news. I mean, that's where most of the news is. I try and take stuff from X and put it on Facebook because a lot of times it's not quite the same of the two social media platforms. They're a very different feel. And if I want to know what's going on, I go to X. If I want to know kind of the pulse of what people are thinking on it, on the left, on the right, in between, I go to Facebook. But this was on Facebook, and this was someone who was documenting in real time what was happening with her family, and it's one of the more devastating things that I've seen. And I don't know if you guys saw this. Okay, stop it. Now you get to see how many notifications come in. I'm on this new, I'm using Firefox, and so it doesn't block the notifications for some reason. Anyway, okay, these photos. So this woman posted these because she was trying to get help to her parents and her sister and her nephew. And so when she first posted this, she posted pictures that her sister was texting her, and she said, you know, they're stuck on the roof of their house and they have one working phone with a battery that's dying, and look at this floodwater up to the roof of the next house. There are 18 wheelers floating by. Um, you know, trees, vehicles, part of their house had detached and was floating by. And this is the last photo of her parents, because shortly after she shared this, the roof collapsed. And so her parents drowned. This was them. And their 6-year-old grandson also drowned. So her nephew drowned. Her sister survived. The woman who took the picture survived. She got caught on some debris and she was able to be rescued. And so she continued posting, updating people on what had happened. And just her faith in God in these posts is just heartbreaking. I'm not going to read this because I'll get emotional, but this woman, like, just learning in real time and sharing with the world that her family just died, and still just with this beautiful faith in God through all of it. It's just heartbreaking. And it's beautiful that she maintains that. So she gave this update that they died, and she was now looking for her sister who had been taken to a hospital. And she said, I will read this part. She says, my parents and nephew drowned because the roof collapsed. My sister got wedged between something. She was rescued an hour later. I cannot convey in words the sorrow, heartbreak, and devastation my sisters and I are going through, nor imagine the pain before us. Please lift my sister, who lost her son, up in prayers, and my other sister and myself as we come together to somehow comfort her and get through each moment banded together. She is alone, without a means to communicate, and we don't know when we will get to her. The image I focus on every time I imagine that moment is how joyfully they are praising Jesus at his feet, dancing with renewed bodies and not remembering how they passed. I plead to Jesus to hold my sister tightly. God is faithful, just, weeps and mourns when we do, and comforts us in our times of need. He rescued my parents and nephew in his way and took them home. Now he will comfort, heal, and rescue us that are broken, wailing, and utterly lost in another way. I've never felt this kind of loss, devastation, and aching of my spirit. I cry out to my Lord, and I keep crying out to my Lord. Take this heavy burden. Please comfort us and constantly remind us of your faithfulness. This woman just praise God, you know? So, they have set up a GoFundMe now. They did find her sister, um, and she's just continuing to update people on everything on this post. Um, yes, Texas Sheep Lady, such a testimony of faith in real time, right? In real time. Am I the only one weeping here? No, you're not. I wasn't gonna read it because I knew it might make me cry. I already cried reading it. Yes, that's real faith. And you know what? This is the best of humanity. Like, this woman, that's the best of humanity. That's the good in humans. Like, that's humans have we have this ability to be good or evil. Many times a day we have choices to be good, to choose good or choose evil. We have so many opportunities every day, and sometimes we stumble and we choose evil in a situation. But as a believer, God, if there is repentance, there's also redemption. And someone like this woman, I read that post and I'm like, this is a woman who's been choosing good a lot, in all those many choices you have every day. This is a woman who's been choosing good a lot, and you can tell it. And yeah, that's the best. Whenever I lose faith in humans, I try and remember, mark this woman's attitude to your mind. And if you're a non-believer, it may seem foreign. Maybe it won't. I don't know. But that's faith. Isn't it beautiful? And that's the best of humanity. We're going to look at some of the worst of humanity as well. Here's a great one. This is some guy in France who felt a need to weigh in. Now, I don't have the screenshot of here of what he was replying to, but it was someone talking about the devastation and people dying, and with video footage of this woman and husband stranded in their home as floodwaters were rising, and how the husband had seen a corpse float by, and just awful, and like one of these many news updates that people are doing on X. So he thinks it's a good idea, this Frenchman, to reply to that and say, and I guess they vote for DeSantis and Trump, like the majority of Floridians. Sorry, but I don't cry for them. Karma, shrugging emoji. Climate change is real. Read, listen, and learn what scientific said, not dumbass far-right politicians, and vote accordingly. After that, I will have compassion. Wow, you monster. This is the worst of humanity. The absolute worst. What a dark, rotten soul you have. And for damn sure that this guy thinks he's one of the good guys. He does. He thinks he's a good person, not like those dumbass far right people in Florida and North Carolina. Not like those bigots, right? That's what he thinks. He's a good person. Not them, though. None of the people in North Carolina or Georgia or South Carolina or Florida or Tennessee or Virginia, none of them, they deserve this. They better get in line and start voting for communists, and then they'll get some compassion from him. Yes, Unlivian, he thinks he's on the right side of history. Just monstrous. They have succeeded in dehumanizing half the country to the other half. Yes, they have. And outside of this country, this guy's in France. Look how much he hates people he knows nothing about. And again, Frenchman, Asheville, North Carolina is a blue city. It's one of the most devastated cities, the most deaths. But according to you, they deserve it because they live in a red state, because they're dumb, backwoods bigots in North Carolina in the South, right? The American South. You're so gross. So gross. I've got another one that's similar. I've seen a lot of this. Let me put this one up. Reddit, of course, which is the dredges of society. I have this show I do once in a while. Have we only done it once or twice? I want to just every once in a while, I want to bring it back. It's a show called Reading Reddit, where we just read about the darkness in humanity on Reddit, because that's where you go to see how dark is the world. Seriously, it's the grossest place on the internet, in my opinion. One of the grossest places. And just full of people like that Frenchman. And so here's a post. There's an X account called Reddit Lies, and they just post a lot of the worst parts of Reddit. And so they shared this. They said Redditors are dancing on the graves of Asheville residents, blaming the storm on climate change and calling them all Trump voters. Again, you morons, Asheville's blue. You guys don't care. Texas, keep this in mind. Hey, are you a leftist in Austin? If you lost everything and your home were flooded and you were on a rooftop and you lost everything you owned, and maybe you lost loved ones who died in the flood, Austinites, you woke Austinites, do you know what the rest of the country and France and everything the left would be saying about you? You deserved it, Austinite, because that's what they're saying about Asheville. Maybe wake up. They hate you. They hate you. They don't view you as one of theirs. Here's what they posted on Reddit. North Carolina town underwater. It's okay. Global warming is not real. Vote for Trump. Just mocking North Carolinians with a picture of the flood. That's Reddit. That's the worst of humanity. Ugh. Okay, I just want to show some of the footage because, again, I don't think that it doesn't seem to me that this is the national story that Katrina was. So there needs to be more attention. These stories, like that story from Facebook of the woman's family who died, like that needs to be, that's humanizing. It's not going to reach the monsters like that Frenchman. They don't care. But it's going to reach some of the normies in the middle, or the normies who are like sort of woke adjacent. And that's why the media is not like covering it like they did Katrina. So let me just go back to the beginning of this one. This is this is Biltmore Village. You guys from the Carolinas, you know the Biltmore Estates? This one just hurts. My husband's never been to the Biltmore house. I've always been like, we're going to go, like one day when we go home to visit my family, I'm going to take you. He loves history, loves antiques and old architecture and everything. And if you haven't been to the Biltmore Estates, I mean, I don't know how bad the devastation is. It seems like it was completely submerged. So I don't know how they're going to be able to renovate that, but I hope they're able to do something. This was a post on X. The water receded at Biltmore Village today, revealing the devastation. I have been in this area many times, and today it was not recognizable. Now that the water is gone, the rebuilding process can begin. And just look at this. All of this was like completely underwater. And again, it's so far inland, Asheville. Like, what is it? Is it a 4 or 5 hour drive from the coast? I think it's a 5 hour drive. Somebody who's in the area can look that up for me. Look it up real quick. I mean, it's pretty far inland. This isn't the upstate, you know. I say the upstate because it's North Carolina. It's close to the upstate, which is where I'm from in South Carolina. Yeah. What do you think that the Biden administration is going to give them? $700 like they did Maui? Here's $700. But we have seemingly endless taxpayer dollars to send to the Ukraine. Why is that? We have endless taxpayer dollars to give to illegal immigrants. I don't know if you guys saw, but ICE just released a report saying that was it over 50,000 of the illegal immigrants that the Biden admin has arrested and then let go, catch and release, or convicted murderers, not accused murderers, convicted murderers in their home countries. They had a record. Murderers. And there was a very high figure for rapists as well, and they just let them go. Probably gave them a voter ID card. $7,000 check. Have you seen these blue states like in Maine where they're spending millions upon millions of taxpayer dollars to create free housing apartment complexes for illegal immigrants? The taxpayers are going to pay their rent for the first year in Maine. I'm remembering this, recalling this off the top of my head. So if I get a fact wrong, please tell me in the chat. But they're going to be paying their rent for the first, I think it's the first year. And then then the illegal immigrants are going to have to pay 30% of what the rent is. Oh, 30%. What about the citizens who live in Maine who are struggling to make ends meet? These aren't even legal. We're not talking about legal immigrants. We're talking about illegal aliens. Sure. Let's take millions of taxpayer dollars and build free housing for them and pay their rent for a year and pay 2/3 of their rent beyond that. But, it's not like we have problems at home, do we? This is another one of Biltmore Forest. This is after the water receded. This guy says, in some spots, the water was up to the roof of the buildings previously, with the whole Biltmore village underwater. That's crazy. It's just... Do you know I had a friend of mine who is not American, a European friend, who was talking. Coincidentally, we were having a discussion about rights and stuff, and we were kind of disagreeing on some things. I really love this guy. He's very open-minded, not like a lot of... He's not woke. He's just old school. What would you call it? Progressive. He's like old school Marxist, possibly. He says that communism was good. He's one of the people who believes communism is good in theory, but doesn't work in practice. Okay, well, I don't think it is good in practice or in theory. I think it's bad in theory. So we were arguing about this. But before the hurricane hit, he was saying to me something about Hurricane Katrina, because we were talking about rights. And he was saying that, but in Hurricane Katrina, the government, your government, the US government didn't distribute relief evenly. They discriminated against Black people in the relief efforts. And it's so weird to me how these things just get picked up and as fact, and someone in another country can believe that. And I just can't swallow that without seeing evidence of it. I used to be, when I was in the left, it plays into your confirmation bias. When you're in the left, you're like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sure the relief efforts were racist and discriminatory. And now I'm like, I hear something like that and I'm like, without evidence, right? And I'm like, I don't believe that. It's the exact opposite. I don't believe it. So it's just interesting that Europeans have that idea that, like, the government in America was racist in how they dealt with the relief efforts in Katrina. And then this hurricane happened. So I'm curious to talk to him again and see what he thinks about what's happening here now. I wonder if it's even news there. Like Katrina was. Remember when I said when Katrina happened, it felt like the whole world was watching? It was. I wonder if Europe even knows. I mean, that Frenchman knows, the one who's celebrating, but I wonder if it's even a big deal there. I don't think it is. Hey, Therese, give it up for Therese, one of our mods. She says, I wish Amy was here. She lived through Katrina. Oh, yeah. I wish Amy were here too. Randy Wallen for $5. Thank you, Randy, for supporting Deprogrammed. He says, Paul T. Martin's pivot points, creating a culture of preparedness and resiliency in America is great. He's a good guy from Austin, Texas. You're always giving me good book suggestions here. You know what? I'm not going to take the time I'm going to text you and you just tell me what that book is later. Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. I'm going to add this to the stage. Let's see. Benny Johnson on X. I saw this. It was a map of all the power outages. Benny said, nightmarish, deadly disaster zones across 5 states, many millions without power. It's millions of people. Thousands are missing or presumed dead. Kamala completely paralyzed. Media silent because chaos is bad optics for the regime. They spent hundreds of billions in Ukraine, won't lift a finger for America. Yeah, it is bad optics. Okay, this is the same conclusion I was coming to, is I think the reason they focused so much on Katrina was because there was a Republican in office, a Republican who I disliked, and I still dislike W. I'm just saying that's why they focused on it, I think. And they could also use their favorite wedge issue, racism, and build a narrative that even my friend in Europe believes to this day that it was a racist response, right? It's not good for them. Benny's right. They're not going to make it the same level. They're not going to give it the same level of attention. And as a result, Americans like ourselves, we're not going to give it the same level of attention. People are not going to be donating in the same way that they were during Katrina. Everyone was donating during Katrina. There were, like I said, constant fund drives everywhere you look. It's like people were, it was overwhelming. But this, they're not going to give it that same level of attention. It's bad for the regime. It's bad optics because look who's in office. And like, he's right. We've sent billions to Ukraine. And what are we doing? Millions without power. Look at my home state, South Carolina, has the most without power currently, over 1 million. These are all the states affected: South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Virginia, Kentucky, West Virginia, Indiana, and Tennessee. You know, the communists don't care about you, Southerners. They don't care about you. It doesn't matter what race you are. It doesn't matter if you are a leftist and you vote for them. They still don't care about you. You deserve it, right? You deserve it because you're in the South. They hate the South. Speaking of spending money on illegal immigrants, there's a lot of looting already happening. And this is in Tennessee here. They've arrested 8 men so far following looting in Washington County, Tennessee. So imagine now all of these men, they're alleged migrants. I don't think that's been confirmed yet. And people should not be jumping to conclusions about their citizenship status yet. You know, you want to make sure you have the facts before you just go off half cocked. But a lot of people are speculating about, hey, what's the immigration status on these guys? And that's not racist to speculate. Do you know why people are speculating that? Because what kind of people loot their own community, their neighbors? What kind of people do that when a disaster of this magnitude strikes and everyone's suffering? People have just lost everything they own, and some people have lost their lives, and they've lost their loved ones, and you think it's a good idea to go into their homes once the water recedes and just start stealing stuff from them. Who does that? You know why people are wondering if you're not really a part of the community? Because you're not behaving like someone who's a part of the community. If you're looting during the worst tragedy that some people will ever go through in their lifetime, and you're there. It's like you're taking tragedy and you're dumping some evil on top of it. They had to deal with tragedy, and now they're dealing with your evil in addition. And who does that to their own community? So they've arrested 8 guys in Tennessee so far who've been looting. Authorities say each of the 8 men arrested are being held at the Washington County Detention Center on a $20,000 bond, scheduled to appear in court on Monday. I guess we'll find out today what the immigration status is. Details on the charges below. Burglary, Jesus Leoden, Garcia Pineda. I can't say all these names. Anyway, here's all their names. Aggravated burglary and burglary. Those are the charges. But they all have like at least 3 names. They all have and these hyphenated last names. It's kind of strange. Anyway. So there you go. Worst of humanity. Again, worst of humanity. We're seeing an example of the worst of humanity. Grave robbers. I mean, that's what you are, essentially. Here's my husband is watching. Anthony Garcia Music says, the kind of people who do this are the people who are not part of the community, people from other countries living there illegally. Yes, that's my gut. But you know what the left is going to say? They're going to say, why are you assuming they're illegal immigrants just because they're Mexican? No, not because they're Mexican. Mexicans who are legal immigrants who are part of a community don't do this to their neighbor. They don't do it to their friends in their own community. We are assuming they're here illegally because of their actions. My husband says, of course, there's a Garcia in there. Hey, it's like me, babe. Smith. There's always one of us. There's always a Smith or a Garcia in any grouping. Okay. This is a video clip of someone talking about the looting. I'm not going to play the clip. I just wanted to read about it. Again, X is where I usually find out what's happening. This is where you're going to get people on the street recording, giving you, eyewitness view of what's going on. This is in Asheville, North Carolina. Asheville, North Carolina resident says it's chaos after Hurricane Helene. He says looters are everywhere. People are vandalizing everywhere. Quote, there were some truckers coming in with supplies and medical stuff trying to help us. People slashed their tires at the rest stop to get their stuff, to loot the relief trucks. People slashed their tires at the rest stop. The roads are completely blocked off. You're not getting out. If you have a weapon, keep it on you because there are people who are intentionally sabotaging stuff. Worst of humanity. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, it's not just illegals who are not integrated into a community who would do this. There's also there are full-on citizens. I know this as well, who are just evil, who are also, I guess, don't place any value in community. That's probably happening too. Davina Duckworth, a repeat of the need for roof Koreans and the upholding of law during a breakdown. Woo, girl. That's a spicy take. But you know what you made me think of with that, the roof Koreans? My husband was just watching an interview with a mobster. I forget his name, but you guys have probably heard of him. I had heard of him before. He's the mobster who became a Christian and talks a lot about what went on in the mob. And anyway, he said he was watching an interview with him where I think it was Shane Cashman from Timcast was asking him a question, the mobster, about if the mob still had a significant presence, would you be seeing all the rioting and looting and stuff that we've been seeing in the past few years during the COVID years, the BLM riots, all this stuff. And he was like, no. Isn't that a funny positive of the mob? Because, businesses, everybody was paying them. They were paying the mob to stay, like, keep my business safe. And so the mob would go in cracking heads. Weird positives of the mob, right? If there were still a serious mob presence, you wouldn't be seeing all this looting and violence. Our government's not doing crap about it. They didn't do anything about it during the BLM riots. They went out there with news cameras, the establishment did, and in front of flames, cities on fire, said it's mostly peaceful protests. These are good protests, right? While they were killing people and destroying their businesses, killing people like David Dorn, it was fine, right? Government's not doing. The government is like an ineffectual. The government is a mob. They take your money. They say this is for your protection. We're going to take a third of your paycheck through all these different various taxes. We're going to take a third of your paycheck and we're going to protect you. That's a mob. But they don't protect you. They don't protect you. And then meanwhile, they're trying to take away your self-protection. They're like, don't worry, we've got it. We're going to take your guns away now. And you still need to keep paying us 30% of your income so we can protect you. Actually, we're going to take all that money you're paying us and send it to Ukraine. That's the system. It's a terrible mob. We need a better mob. We need a better mob. Yes, Davina, you guys are on the same wavelength as me. It depends on which mob you're paying off, the government or the other mobs. Yes. Vote for a better mob. Yeah. Wow. Is this true? Bastello Maserati says London takes 90% of the annual take home. 90? I guess that depends on what income bracket you're in, but look, here in the States, your income tax alone is, for the top 1%, is like over 40%. They take almost half of what they make. It's like, oh, you're successful. Now we're going to reward you for being a successful contributor to society by taking half of your income. Don't worry. Did you guys know, I was just recently reading about in 1913, when our government introduced, this is the thing about forgetting history and people not passing down history to younger generations, and it's also about, who controls the writing of history. But I was just recently reading about in 1913 when they introduced the income tax. Apparently at that time it was very contentious and people were not for it, and the way they were able to get it passed was by saying, we promise you, like the politicians were like, we promise you it'll never go above 1 to 2%. We promise you. Let's get this passed. Income tax. 1 to 2%. Never go above that. Flash forward 100 years. 100 plus years. Do any of us know? Were any of us alive in 1913? Do we remember that promise? No. We're just born into a world where it's normal. This is a slippery slope. So many people get hung up on the slippery slope fallacy that they actually cause us to fall down a slippery slope, because they think that they don't understand that something, just because something can be used as a fallacious argument, doesn't mean that it doesn't ever happen. And that's a slippery slope. You let the government come in and say, yeah, it's normal. We're going to take 1 to 2% of your income now in taxes. 110 years later, they're like taking 30%. Well, they promised you they'd never take more than 1. It makes me think of the Patriot Act. Remember in the Patriot Act, they said, hey, to protect you guys from terrorism, you're going to have to let us, the government, look in your bank accounts when we want to. We're going to look in your private bank accounts and see how much money you have, what's going on in there. But don't worry. We're only going to do it if you have a transaction bigger than $10,000. $10,000 transaction, you get a flag, your bank has to tell us about it, and we get to take a peek in your bank account. It's to protect you. Don't worry. Want to make sure you're not a terrorist, right? Don't worry, $10,000. Then what happened when Biden became president? They were like, we're going to drop it to $600. You're already used to it now. Like a generation or two later, you're used to it. You're used to look, we already do this. You guys are cool with it already. We're saying is let's just drop we're going to flag your account if there's a transaction over $600. We get to take a look in your bank account. That's what happens. That's what happens. Slippery slope, right? Young people today are like, that sounds normal. They've always been able to look in our bank account anyway. I guess it's not that bad. We're just reducing down to 600. The swill. It's like a drug addiction saying, don't worry, I'll only do the smallest amount of crack. I won't ever do more than this. That's the government. That's the government. Don't worry. We're just coming for assault weapons. Don't worry that we can't define that and we don't know what that means. And we're never going to use it though we're just going to use it to take away your semi-automatic rifles, right? Like we're never going to use it to take away your semi-automatic handguns. Don't worry about it. Just let us get this on the books. Just let us get this on the books where we get to come and say, you don't get to have this semi-automatic weapon. We're not going to use it to take handguns. Don't worry. Don't worry. 2 generations down the line. Rifles only ever accounted for less than 5% of gun deaths. And those are banned. You're not allowed to have those. So why should you be allowed to have handguns? That's exactly what they're going to do. Of course. Of course. Slippery slopes. They're real. We're only going to ban the really scary looking guns. Yeah, exactly. Rock Lexicon. They get the ban through, the next generation. They're like, hey, this is weird that, you guys aren't allowed to have semi-automatic rifles, but you're allowed to have semi-automatic handguns. We're gonna take those handguns away now. Yes. It's just crazy. Okay, I've got some news articles pulled up as well. Wait, one more video footage. This one's from Chimney Rock, which is one of the hardest hit areas, as we've mentioned. I don't know this guy, but I was just looking for video clips because I wanted to see what's happening there. He says, I went to help in the Lake Lure, Chimney Rock area today, and it's hard to describe. I've never seen anything like this. It's post-apocalyptic. It's so overwhelming, you don't even know how to fathom what recovery looks like, let alone where to start. It's going to be a long path to recovery that all levels of stakeholders are going to be needed. And this is just, everything's gone. It's just absolute devastation. Like you said, post-apocalyptic. It's just, I don't know. It's incredible. There's a boat, a couple of boats. What's that relief package going to be, do you think? I can already tell you it's not going to be nearly enough. Just crazy. This is from CNBC. Remember, they're the ones who did the whole piece about how Trump is a big old bully who's politicizing the hurricane. And then buried deep in the piece, they tell you, well, actually, Kamala was criticizing him first for saying, we're with you. They have a photo spread over there at CNBC. Photos, Hurricane Helene leaves flooding and destruction across the southeastern U.S. Hurricane Helene ravaged communities across the southeastern United States as mass flooding and brutal winds descended on Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. As of Sunday, the death toll climbed towards 100, according to Reuters. President Joe Biden said that he and Vice President Kamala Harris were committed to deploying all resources to aid the recovery effort. Yeah, I'm sure. This picture's from Florida. Horseshoe Beach, Florida. Hurricane Helene ravaged communities across the southeastern United States as mass flooding and brutal winds descended on Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Virginia, and Tennessee. Evacuations began before the storm made landfall and have been ongoing in the days since. Here's a quote from Biden, quote, "As we turn toward recovery efforts, we will make certain that no resource is spared to ensure that families, businesses, schools, hospitals, and entire communities can quickly begin their road to rebuilding," he said Saturday. Nothing spared? Or is it going to be like Maui? Here are photos of some of the wreckage left in the wake. I mean, this is just because after the waters receded, you see all these boats just piled up. This is also in this is in Georgia where a tree fell in there, came through their house in two different places. You can see they've got water damage up there as well. Ugh. This is a guy sawing a tree. Uh, his car landed on top of the tree. Horseshoe Beach, Florida. Oh man, I mean, this area that's still flooded in Florida. This is in Boone. Oh, I didn't mention Boone yet. Boone also destroyed. Boone, where the water levels were up to almost the top of the stop sign in some places. Like, that's just crazy. This is also in Boone. This is a rescue boat, Florida. This is about Chimney Rock. Worse than you can ever imagine, Chimney Rock devastated by Hurricane Helene. Rescue crews have helped to save more than 150 people in Chimney Rock. By Saturday night, it's unclear how many others are still missing. At least 90 people have been confirmed dead in connection with Hurricane Helene, including 30 in North Carolina's Buncombe County, officials said. About 110 miles northwest of Charlotte, the village of Chimney Rock was among the communities hit hardest. People say the devastation is, quote, worse than you can ever imagine. George Carter, a North Carolina resident owner, told NBC News he's been driving up the mountain from his home in Lake Lure to get enough cell service to contact families and neighbors. Carter said he doesn't know anyone personally who died in the storm, but the devastation is shocking. It's astronomical. I mean, that's a word that gets misused, but that's correct in this case. There's mud everywhere, Carter said. Buildings are gone. Streets are gone. Homes are completely gone or damaged. Maybe 40% of Chimney Rock is still there. The stuff that's still there is filled with mud and smashed up. At one point Friday, emergency officials in Rutherford County feared the Lake Lure Dam was going to fail. State officials said the structure remained intact, but did suffer some erosion as water spilled over the sides during Helene's heavy rain. Charlotte City Councilman Tariq Bakari went to the Lake Lure area to help with cleanup on Sunday. He described it as post-apocalyptic. Oh, that was that guy's post who I had just shown. I didn't realize he was a Charlotte City Councilman. And then this article, this is from CNN. Helene flooding strands hundreds of North Carolina residents as storms Death toll reaches 95. I mean, it's over 100 now, but this is from yesterday. And you can just see this aerial view here. God Save the South. God Save the South. God Save the South was a song. Some people call it the Confederate battle song. I didn't know this, actually. I was thinking of a title for this, and I thought, God Save the South, because that's where my mind's at lately, and that's where my prayers are out. My prayers are at, and God Save the Queen. Like it's sort of God Save the South. And I looked it up, and it was a song and poem that was considered the unofficial national anthem of the Confederate States of America during the American Civil War. So I'm probably going to get called a bigot for using it in the title. After I put in the title, I was looking it up, and I was like, "Oh, great! It's a Confederate song. They're gonna," but I don't care because I looked up the lyrics, and I think they're great. I think they're great. Lord have mercy, says Mark. Yeah, Lord have mercy. God save the South. Here are the lyrics. It was a red hot night in Mobile. Sweat glistened on the Reverend's chin. His mohair suit was shining. He told us all about sin. It could be wall to wall in Wall Street. We could be living hand to mouth. Jesus loved a Yankee, but God saved the South. Across the street in the pool hall, Bubba put the 8 ball down. It's a high five celebration. They passed the jack around. It's wall to wall in Wall Street. We're living hand to mouth. Jesus loved a Yankee, but God saved the South. God save the South. Yankee boy, shut your mouth. Yes, God save the South. Yankee boy, shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. Some long haired boys with guitars playing behind the chicken wire. They're going up to New York City, going to sing about Atlanta's fire. It could be wall to wall in Wall Street. We could be living hand to mouth. Jesus loved a Yankee, but God saved the South. I had never heard that song before. Um, but I have a lot of love for the South, obviously. I have a lot of family and friends there, and I just I love the people in the South. I love the food where I'm from, of course. Um, I love that it's a place that is not overwhelmingly destroyed by leftism yet. There's a lot that's been destroyed, yes, and there's a lot that's been destroyed by drugs and poverty and crime and stuff coming in, but there's a lot of beauty in the South, and people are much more likely to show you the best of humanity, to throw in and to help you and to help their neighbors and to talk to their neighbors, to know who their neighbors are. Um, and the South gets just shat upon constantly in this culture, doesn't it? It just gets shat on by the elite, by the establishment, by the people they talk about the flyover states and they talk about the South and they talk about it like it's a bunch of inbred bigots and idiots and, you know, they don't know anything. I've lived all over. I'm from South Carolina, yes, but I lived in New York City for a while. I was a leftist. I was producing a leftist TV show. With Chris Rock of all people. Like I was, in that leftist, elitist world and bubble. I lived in Los Angeles for 15 years, worked in the entertainment industry. I live in Texas now. I love people all over, but Southern people will get it done. Like you can rely on them. They have a grit about them. I'm talking about the best parts of the South. There's also, yes, there's the negative parts. And like I said, a lot of the parts of the South have been devastated by meth and other drugs and people just like destroying their beautiful souls, which the government loves. So why would you do that? Don't do that to yourself. But yes, there's negative parts, but there's so much just grit and beauty there, and it makes me sick to my stomach to see people in leftists and people in other countries like the French guy sparing no humanity for people and just treating Southerners like they're dirt, like they're animals. Like, screw you. I've been all over. And I love Texas. This is true. Texas is its own thing. It's not like the South or the East or the North or anything. It's its own thing. And I love that about it. Second on my list, the South. They hate us because they ain't us. That's true. I'm going to wrap this up. I just wanted to look through some of this news with you guys because it's hard to read it. It's emotional and all this stuff. And I'll just say, if you're a believer, just pray. And I don't even know what relief efforts to trust, like what independent relief efforts to trust anymore, because so many charities like Oprah and stuff just take your money. And if you know of a good charity, drop it in the comments. If there's a place that you think people should check out, if they want to donate supplies or anything or money, just put that in the comments. I'm not linking to the government stuff. No way. And yeah, if you're a believer, just pray for people and pray for our leaders, even the ones that you hate. Pray that they do the right thing by people. And if you want to go listen to a song after this to lift your spirits, you can go listen to I was going to say Thank God I'm a Country Boy, which is John Denver. But that's not the song I'm thinking of. Oh, what is it? It's the Waylon Jennings. What is it? You guys, somebody in the chat tell me, what's the song I'm thinking of? It's about it's not Thank God I'm a Country Boy. But anyway, there's a Waylon Jennings song. I'm going to link it below. I was listening to it earlier and I was just like, yeah, this is what I need to listen to right now. It's about country boys and all the great things about Southerners. And yeah, Country Boy Can't Survive, Therese. I knew you would help me out. I appreciate it. And A Country Boy Can Survive. Go listen to A Country Boy Can Survive. If you don't listen to country music, go listen to this one. It's a good introduction to outlaw country. And yeah, rest in peace, Chris Christopherson. I did hear about that as well, which just happened. Davina says he was a Texan who went to Oxford in England as a Rhodes Scholar. That just happened as well. Speaking of outlaw country. Okay, guys, I'm going to take off. We are doing book club Tuesday, October 15th. We're reading Hillbilly Elegy. If you want to read this before the election, this is a good excuse to do it. If you want to be a part of our book club, just email me at deprogrampod@gmail.com and let me know you want to be in this one. Tuesday, October 15th at 6 p.m. Central. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. We are finally back with a popped culture. Mr. Chris and I are going over what we're doing. Mr. Chris is back. We'll be back on Wednesday at 8 o'clock Central and have some fun and levity together. Okay. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.